Money. You're going to be happy. You've got to have money, and you've got to have lots of it so you can do whatever you want. If you're going to be happy, worldling, what do you got to have? Well, you got to have laughter. You got to have jokes. You got to have humor. The happy people are the ones who are laughing all the time. If you're going to be happy, you got to be assertive. You got to get what's yours and not wait around for somebody to give it to you. You take it. You're going to be happy. If you're going to be happy, you got to be like us after 4 days at camp, full. Just full of every kind of good food you can think of, and a lot you can't think of. Just everything you ever wanted. You got to be full up to here with it if you're going to be happy. If you're going to be happy, you've got to receive justice. If you're going to be happy, you got to be beautiful. I mean, we all know the only people that are happy are the beautiful people. You know that guy who gets up in the morning and looks in the mirror and says, "Hi, guy." The woman who says, maybe a touch here and a touch there, but no. The beautiful people, they're the happy ones. We see them on TV, we know they're happy. The women with the big hair, you know. Even the men with the big hair. It's interesting, a poll recently said that 98% of American women are unhappy with their bodies. And before you men go to feeling proud, 92% of American men are unhappy with their bodies. It means 6% of us men haven't figured it out yet. But if you're going to be happy, you've got to be beautiful. If you're going to be happy, you've got to be a winner. Is it Casey Stengel who said, winning ain't everything, but losing ain't nothing? Think about it a while. Winners are happy people, not losers. The people who can do a dance in the end zone. We're number one, we're number one. Winners. The people who are admired and accepted, they're the happy people. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? It all makes sense. But now I want you to hear a very strange man. He's kind of weird, and I want you to decide whether we ought to commit him or not. Happy are the people who are poor. You're kidding me. No. Happy are the people who cry a lot. Come on. Happy are the people who don't have to have their rights. Happy are the people who are hungry. Happy are the people who would rather give mercy than get justice. Happy are the people who don't care so much about how the outside looks, but are really deeply concerned about what's inside. Happy are the people who would rather make peace than win. Happy. Are you ready for this one? Happy are the people who get laughed at and mocked and beat up. Well, we all agree, don't we? Sign the paper, put him away. I mean, the man is a nut. He is a certified nut. That isn't a prescription for happiness. That's a prescription for sadness. That's a prescription for misery. Poverty, weeping, hunger. Come on. You're ahead of me, aren't you? The man who said that is Jesus Christ. And in the days when we used to memorize Scripture, a lot of us memorized those sayings. We call them the Beatitudes. I always wondered where you had to be at to say a beatitude. We sanitize them. We kill them. What do you mean, Jesus Christ? What do you mean? Happy are the people who are poor. Happy are the people who cry. Happy are the people who don't get their rights. Happy are the people who are hungry. Happy are the losers. Come on, Jesus. What are you talking about? I guess a year ago I couldn't have preached this message because I'd never been there before. But in the last year, I've been there. Jesus isn't crazy. Jesus isn't nuts. He is right on target. You see, I've been to Romania. Now, the Eastern Bloc countries are all poor, and Romania is among the poorest of them. A good salary in Romania, you ready for this, is $100 a month. And a jar of instant coffee costs, same thing it costs here, $4. Now, pastors don't make a good salary. Pastors make $60 a month. A 4-room apartment that you can't keep warm in the winter at the top of a 10-story faceless high-rise costs $10,000. A 4-cylinder junker car that smokes like it was on something costs $4,000. And you say, hey man, I wish I could buy a car for $4,000. But you got to translate it. Put their average salary in our average salary terms. And then what? Then that 4-room apartment that you can't keep warm in the wintertime would cost you $300,000. That junker car would cost you $90,000. A jar of coffee would cost you $45. And to be a Christian was to be shut out of the professions. You couldn't be a lawyer. The man who's the president of the Baptist Church was 2 years into law school when he accepted Christ. He was on the street the next day. You couldn't be a doctor. You couldn't be a professor in the university. No, you could dig ditches. To be a Christian in Romania is to be poor and hungry. And they were persecuted. Now, it wasn't the really awful persecution. You know, you either give up your Christianity or we're going to shoot you right here. No, that's easy. No, it was just the pressure, the subtle pressure. You couldn't talk about your faith outside the walls of the church, or your income would be cut, or your liberty, your movement would be restricted. If you had a prayer meeting in your home, you would know that before morning, the Secret Service would be knocking at your door. One of your friends would have informed on you. But on Wednesday nights, the churches in Romania are full to the doors. And on Sundays, they can't get in. They stand on the sidewalks. And the singing and the praying before the morning service, between an hour and a half of Sunday school and an hour and a half of preaching, they have an hour of praying. And they pray out loud. And I didn't know a word of Romanian, but I knew where their hearts were. And they're happy. Oh, not a superficial, glitzy happiness like you see on the tube, but a smile that comes from the depths of their hearts, they're happy. The leading pastor in the Baptist church in Romania, and it's interesting, the Baptists there are more Armenian than a lot of us are. Labels can get all mixed up when you go around the world. The leading Baptist pastor in the country wrote a Christian manifesto, which was a point-by-point refutation of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, and it was circulated underground all over Eastern Europe. It became the working document for Christians in the East Bloc, and the Romanians found out who wrote it, and they called him in for interrogation. 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 7 months. You're a CIA agent, aren't you? Just admit it. The CIA wrote that paper. You're just a lackey. No, the CIA didn't write it. Yes, they did. No, they didn't. Day after day after day. And finally there came a day when the communist colonel couldn't stand it anymore, and he blew up, and he jumped up from behind his desk, and he grabbed Joseph Son by the shoulders and began banging his head on the wall. And Joseph Son said, "That is illegal. It's written in the Constitution of our country." And he said, "I screamed at the top of my voice so that everybody in that building would know what was going on." But he said that night, my Jesus began to talk to me. And in the morning, I said, "Sir, I need to apologize to you." And he said, "What?" He said, "Yes, sir. You see, Jesus told me that I would be privileged to share the fellowship of his suffering." I'd forgotten that. But yesterday, you helped me to walk closer to Jesus. I'm sorry for thinking those bad things about you. Thank you. Said the guy sputtered and stuttered, and he said, I shouldn't have done it. Never mind. No. He said he never touched me again. He wasn't going to be any agent of Jesus Christ. Finally, after the months had gone on, Joseph Son came into the interrogation room one morning, and there was a cocked pistol laying on the desk. The interrogator said, "All right, we've tried, we've given you every opportunity to admit the truth, and you continue in your foolishness and in your denial of what we know is the truth, so we're done with you. Do you have any last things you'd like to say? I'm going to take you out in the back and shoot you." Son said, "Sir, if you would do that, it would be a great blessing to Romania." Said, "There are tapes of my sermons all over this country, and they're not accomplishing very much. But I believe that if you would baptize them in my blood, I believe the Holy Spirit would be able to use them to bring a great revival in this country. You see, sir, your weapon is killing. Mine is dying. Go ahead." So the guy uncocked the pistol, put it in the drawer, and called the guard and said, "Get him out of here. He's nuts." Your weapon is killing, but my weapon is dying. They exiled him from the country. He came eventually to America, and they said to him, "Now look, Joseph, there are a lot of Romanians in this country. You can settle down here and have a fruitful ministry. You might just as well write off Romania." Joseph's son said, "You don't understand." Now this is 8 years before 1989. 8 years. He said, "You don't understand. Communism is a dead letter. It has failed in its promises. It cannot produce what it promised. Only one system in the world can produce what communism has promised, and that's Christianity. Communism is dead in Romania, and Christianity's day is coming." And they said, "You're crazy." But for 8 years, He translated Christian literature. For 8 years, he trained young Romanian people who were ready to give their lives as soon as the opportunity came. And in December of 1989, when Romania came apart, there were people, there was literature, there were plans. They were ready to go into that country. And then there's Dr. Nick. When Joseph Son was exiled, here was a church of 3,000 members. Now their building only seats 1,000, but they had 3,000 members. How about your churches? 1,000 members, 300 attending? Well, never mind. 3,000 people. The government would not permit any of the ordained pastors to come to that church. They expected to kill it. They expected to die. And the elders of the church called a lay pastor who happened to be the leading endocrinologist in the country. Guy who works on glands. And they said, Dr. Nick, you are to be our pastor. He said, you don't understand. I couldn't get a license to come there. And if I couldn't get a license, I wouldn't be permitted to live in the city. I live 100 miles away. And they said, you're our pastor. You're the one the Lord has told us. And he prayed, and his family prayed, and he gave up endocrinology to pastor a church. I had gotten done teaching one day and was flying high because that's my high. And he talked to me afterwards. He said, Brother John, medicine is for me what theology is for you. Why did you do it? For Jesus? For Jesus? He had to live in a different room every night. You could not stay in one place more than 24 hours unless you had a license from the government to live in that city. On Friday nights, he would drive 100 miles back home, spend Friday night and Saturday morning with his family, Saturday afternoon, back to Aradia, back to the sheep. He said one Saturday afternoon he was lying in the bed at home. It had gone on for 3 years. And his wife came in and said, Dear, it's time for you to go. He said, I don't think I'm going. He said, I just don't see how I can go on any longer. It's just too much. He said, she stood there with her hands on her hips. She said, what are you doing? Those are your sheep. They're going to die without you. How can you lie in that bed? Get out of that bed, man. Said, I got to the door and there was my 14-year-old son, and my son said, Daddy, the Bible says if a man puts his hand to the plow and looks back, he's not worthy. Said, what are you going to do with a bunch like that? I went and got my coat and got in the car. They interrogated him. And at the end of a 10-hour day, he said to his interrogators, are you finished? They said, yes, we're done with you. He said, could I say something? He said, sure. He said, I want to thank you. Why? You have made me the happiest man in the world. What? He said, my Jesus says, happy are you when they revile you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. Thank you. You have shown me I really do belong to Jesus Christ today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And they said, get him out of here. Happy are the poor. Happy are the hungry. Happy are those who weep. Why are these Romanians happy? in poverty? Why are they happy with the sad things that have been done to them, that have happened to them across the years? Why are they happy with so little? Because they know where they're headed. See, that's what the Beatitudes are all about. Why are these people happy? These poor people? Because they're going to inherit the kingdom of heaven. Oh, yes, you see, if you're a child of the world, you've got to be rich, because you know one day they're going to shut the lid on the casket. And it's all over. You've got to laugh, because you know one day you'll be crying forever. You've got to get what's yours, because if you don't, you never will. And the Romanians understand. Ceausescu, oh, he built a palace. The only bigger building in the world is the Pentagon. And today it stands empty. Ceausescu thought he would inherit the world, and he inherited dust and ashes. And these poor, crying, hungry people have inherited the kingdom of heaven, and they know they got the best end of the deal. See, I used to think that Jesus was saying poor people are happy people, but that's not what he's saying. He's talking to his disciples here in the Sermon on the Mount, and the rest of the crowd was eavesdropping. And he says, guys, I want to tell you something. You got a choice to make here now. You can be rich and inherit the world, or you can be poor for my sake and inherit heaven. Which do you want? You can laugh your way all the way to the grave and have weeping forever and ever. Or you can give yourself to deal with the evil that is in this world. You can give yourself to bear the sorrows of the broken and the crying, and you can have joy for eternity. Which do you want? You see, you pay your money and you take your choice. And the Romanians understand they got the best end of the deal. As I was preaching one night, the executive director of the Evangelical Alliance, they figure there are about 1 million believers, evangelical believers in Romania today. After 45 years of the government doing its dead level best to stomp them out, about 33 million Romanians and at least 1 million are evangelical believers. And they formed this alliance. And this young man, Ioan Pea, a mathematician, good job with the government. 5 years ago, he got converted. 2.5 years ago, they came to him and said, Ioan, we need your skills to direct the Evangelical Alliance. And he went to Jesus, and Jesus said, yeah, it's a good idea, Ioan. Drop the job. You'll be interested in how big a staff they have for 1 million people. 4. Ioan, the director, a secretary, a treasurer, and an accountant. 4 people. And Ioan sat one evening as I was preaching, and I saw a man coming down the aisle. He was troubled, I could see it. And he talked with Ioan for a moment, and then the two of them got up and went out. And after the service, Ioan said, you want to know what we were talking about? And I said, yeah. He said, he's a believer. He was involved right at the beginning in the revolution, and he's troubled. He said, Ioan, the government is taking away the freedoms they said they were going to give us Christians. And we've got to organize. We've got to get together. We've got to get... He said, I looked at him and I said, my brother, you've forgotten something. When the wolf and the lamb fight, the lamb does not have the option